The Beastwoman guard purred when I teased her. Now she refuses to leave my company. HFY Sci-Fi Stories. The great station of Aranth hung in the quiet darkness of space, a giant wheel of metal and light spinning above a blue-green world. Hundreds of species passed through its wide gates every day, their voices mixing into a constant hum of languages. For most, it was just another hub in the interstellar Concord. For humanity, however, it was something far greater, the first true step into the unknown. Captain Marcus Hale stood near the viewing glass as his transport slowed and locked into the station. He was a diplomat, not a soldier, though his military title was kept for formality. His role was not to command fleets or give orders, but to speak for his people, in a place where they were still very new and very small. He knew the other species of the Concord did not take humans seriously yet. Some saw them as weak, too emotional, too unpredictable. Marcus had come to change that impression. The docking gate opened, and he was met by a group of guards in dark armor. They were not human. Each stood a head taller than him, their movements smooth and silent. Their ears were sharp, their tails swayed behind them, and their golden eyes glowed faintly under the lights. These were the Falerians, a warrior species known for discipline and pride. The Conquered trusted them to maintain peace in such places, where politics could easily turn into conflict. One of them stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, her black hair tied back, her armor polished to a mirror shine. Her tail flicked once as she gave a slow bow. "I am Sarah," she said, her voice calm but deep, "assigned to guard you during your stay." Marcus gave a polite nod. "Captain Marcus Hale. I appreciate the escort." She said nothing more, only turned to lead him through the wide corridors of the station. Her steps were silent, but her presence was heavy, as though she filled the space around her with unspoken authority. Marcus followed, but his eyes wandered. Everywhere he looked, there were sights that still amazed him. Towering insectoid traders with glittering shells, scaled diplomats speaking in hissing tones, machines walking beside flesh and blood beings. Humanity was a small ripple in this ocean of civilizations, and yet, here he was, walking in the center of it. As they moved through the halls, Marcus tried to break the silence. "So," he said, glancing at Sarah, "is guarding humans considered a punishment or a reward?" Sarah's golden eyes flicked toward him, her expression unreadable. "It is duty," she replied simply. "Duty," Marcus repeated with a faint grin. "Noted, but you must admit it's unusual. Humans are hardly dangerous." Sarah stopped walking for the briefest moment. "Danger is not always measured in strength," she said, before continuing forward. Marcus raised a brow, amused by her seriousness. He had dealt with soldiers before, but Sarah's species seemed to carry pride like a second skin, perhaps too much pride. He let a small chuckle escape as he noticed her tail swaying slightly behind her. Without thinking, he said, "Careful with that tail, someone might step on it." For a heartbeat, Sarah froze. Marcus expected a glare or a sharp rebuke. Instead, to his surprise, he heard something else, a low, soft sound. A purr. He blinked, unsure if he had imagined it. Sarah quickly straightened, her face as stern as before, but the tips of her ears twitched slightly. "Did you just—" Marcus began, but then stopped himself, smiling faintly. "Never mind." Sarah did not answer, only kept walking. But Marcus noticed how she stayed closer to him now, her stride matching his with quiet precision. The rest of the walk passed in silence, though the air between them felt changed. Marcus kept thinking about that strange reaction. In every file, he had read the Falerians were described as proud warriors, unwilling to show weakness or softness. Yet one simple teasing remark had drawn something out of Sarah that did not fit the records. When they reached the guest quarters prepared for him, Sarah finally spoke again. "You will remain here until the assembly gathers. My post is outside your door." Marcus gave a polite nod, though curiosity tugged at him. "You take this very seriously." "Of course," she replied. "I was chosen to guard you." He leaned slightly against the doorway, watching her golden eyes. "Well then, Sarah, I'll try not to make your job too difficult." Her tail flicked once more, and though her face stayed neutral, Marcus thought he caught the faintest hint of another purr in her throat before she turned away. When the door slid shut behind him, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, still smiling. Humanity had come here to prove themselves, to show that they belonged in the conquered. Perhaps it would not be done through strength or technology alone. Perhaps, he thought, it might be something smaller, something as simple as a joke that made even a Beastwoman guard start to purr. Marcus awoke the next morning to the soft hum of the station around him. Light panels in the ceiling shifted from dim blue to warm gold, imitating the rising of a sun that did not exist. He stretched, put on his clean uniform, and stepped out of his quarters. Sarah was there, standing as still as a statue beside the door. She had not moved since last night, or at least that was how it seemed. Her arms were crossed, her golden eyes sharp and unblinking, her tail curled neatly behind her. "You were here all night?" Marcus asked, raising a brow. "Yes," she replied simply. "You don't sleep?" "I sleep when needed." Her tone was flat, but there was no mistaking the pride in her voice. Marcus gave a half smile. "Remind me never to play cards with you. You'd win every time." For a second her ear twitched, though her face remained perfectly calm. Marcus remembered the purr from yesterday and had to hold back a chuckle. Something about her composure made teasing far too tempting. They walked through the station together, heading toward the assembly halls. Sarah walked close, her stride perfectly matching his. It was more than protection. It was as if she wanted to stay within arm's reach at all times. Other Falerian guards noticed it. Some of them gave Sarah curious looks as they passed. A tall guard with silver fur leaned toward another and muttered something in their language, making both chuckle softly. Marcus could not understand the words, but he caught the way Sarah's tail flicked sharply at the sound. "Something I should know?" Marcus asked. "They speak too much," Sarah said flatly. Marcus grinned. "About me or about you?" Her silence was answer enough. Inside the great halls, Marcus took his place among the diplomats. The chamber was wide, with seats arranged in a circle around a floating holographic display. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their places, their voices low as they waited for the session to begin. Sarah stood just behind Marcus, silent and watchful. Every time he glanced back, she was there, golden eyes scanning the room, ears twitching at the smallest sound. He realized quickly that he did not need to worry about his safety. Not with her around, but her closeness soon began to draw attention. A representative from the insectoid Thryne leaned toward Marcus and clicked in their odd voice. "Your guard seems unusually attached." Marcus gave a polite smile. "I suppose humans inspire loyalty." Sarah did not move, but Marcus thought. He saw her shoulders straighten just slightly at his words. As the meeting continued, Marcus tried to focus on the discussions. Trade routes, defense agreements, and resource rights. Topics that seemed endless and heavy. Humanity's role in these talks was still small. They were new to the conquered, barely beginning to prove themselves. Every word he spoke would be weighed carefully by the others. Yet despite the seriousness of the meeting, Marcus found his mind drifting back to Sarah. Whenever another delegate raised their voice or leaned too close, her tail gave a slow twitch. Whenever he shifted in his chair, she adjusted her stance to mirror him. It was as though she had decided he was not just her charge but her chosen responsibility. Later, as the meeting ended, Sarah followed him out into the corridor. He finally asked, "Sarah, do you always guard so closely?" Her golden eyes met. It is what is required." "Required by who? Your commanders?" "No." She paused as if searching for the right words. "By me." Marcus blinked at her honesty. Falerians were not known for speaking openly about their feelings. Yet Sarah had said it without hesitation. He gave a small smile. "I hope that doesn't mean I can't breathe without your permission." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then, very softly, Marcus heard it again, a faint, almost hidden purr from deep in Sarah's chest. She quickly turned her head away, pretending to focus on something in the distance, but Marcus had already caught it. "You're doing it again," he said quietly, amusement in his voice. Sarah's ears twitched, but she said nothing. That evening, as Marcus returned to his quarters, he noticed Sarah did not wait outside the door this time. Instead, she stepped inside with him, scanning the room before standing near the wall. "You don't have to follow me everywhere," Marcus said. "Yes, I do," Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "You know, if you keep this up, people will think you like my company." To his surprise, Sarah looked at him directly this time, her golden eyes unblinking. "I do." The words were so simple, so direct, that Marcus felt caught off guard. He opened his mouth to reply, then stopped himself, unsure of what to say. He finally let out a laugh and shook his head. "Well, Sarah, I guess I'll have to get used to always having you around." She gave no reply, but her tail flicked once, and the quiet sound of a purr filled the room again. And so it was decided. Not by Marcus, not by the conquered, but by Sarah herself. From that moment forward, she would not leave his side. The station never truly slept. Even when the main lights dimmed and the halls quieted, there was always a hum of machinery, the faint shuffle of footsteps, and the distant echo of alien voices. Marcus had grown used to it after only a few days, but tonight something felt different. He was sitting at his desk reviewing the endless notes from the Concord sessions when Sarah's ears twitched suddenly. She was standing near the door as usual, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her weapon. Her golden eyes narrowed, and her tail stilled in the air. Marcus noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked in a low voice. Sarah did not answer right away. She tilted her head slightly, listening to something Marcus could not hear. Finally, she said, "Movement in the corridor. Too careful. Too slow." Marcus frowned. "Could just be another guard." "No," Sarah said firmly. "Guards walk, with purpose. This one is trying not to be heard." Before Marcus could reply, the lights flickered once, just enough to draw his attention. Sarah moved instantly, placing herself between Marcus and the door. Her body was tense, her ears sharp, her hand gripping her weapon tightly. Then the faint sound came, soft metal scraping against the panel of the door. Someone was trying to force it open. Marcus's heart quickened. He was no soldier. If someone wanted him gone, he would have little chance to defend himself. But Sarah was calm, her body lowering slightly into a stance that reminded him of a predator about to strike. The lock hissed, and the door slid halfway open before Sarah lunged forward. A blur of motion, her hand shot out and caught the intruder by the collar, dragging them inside before Marcus could even see clearly. The figure struggled, but Sarah slammed them against the wall with a strength that seemed effortless. It was not another Valyrian guard. The intruder was thin, with gray skin and long fingers that twitched nervously. Their eyes glowed faintly red, and in their hand was a small device blinking with light. Sarah growled low in her throat. "Saboteur." Marcus rose to his feet, his voice steady despite the situation. "What is that in your hand?" The intruder hissed in a language Marcus did not know, but Sarah seemed to understand. She bared her teeth, pressing the figure harder against the wall. The device clattered to the floor. Marcus picked it up carefully. Even without knowing much about alien technology, he could tell it wasn't harmless. Small wires pulsed with light, and the edges of the casing glowed faintly blue. "Explosive?" Marcus asked. "Not exactly," Sarah said. "A disruptor. It would overload the power systems in this section, cause panic, maybe death." Marcus frowned. "And conveniently, it would make the humans look weak for failing to protect themselves." The intruder hissed again, but Sarah silenced them with a growl that made Marcus's skin prickle. He realized then why Valyrians were feared. As warriors, she did not even need to strike. Her presence alone was enough to crush resistance. "Who sent you?" Marcus demanded. The intruder glared but said nothing. Sarah's golden eyes flashed, and she pressed closer, her claws sliding out slightly from her fingers. The alien shuddered, but still gave no answer. Marcus raised a hand. "That's enough. If they're here, then others might be as well. We need to report this." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. She tied the intruder's wrists with a restraint from her belt and pushed them toward the door. As they walked through the corridors, Marcus noticed how other guards stared as Sarah passed, dragging the prisoner behind her. Whispers followed them. By the time they reached the security office, word had already spread. Inside, Valyrian officers examined the device carefully. Their leader, a broad-shouldered male with silver fur, gave Marcus a look of respect. Strange. These disruptors are not easy to smuggle aboard. Someone helped them. Marcus crossed his arms. And they chose to target me. Humanity is still being tested here, isn't it? Someone wants us to fail. The officer gave a slow nod. Perhaps. But you should. No, without your guard, this sabotage might have succeeded. Marcus glanced at Sarah, who stood silently at his side. She did not speak, though her ears flicked at the praise. Later, when they were alone again, Marcus leaned against the wall and looked at her. You saved me tonight. It is my duty, Sarah replied. Marcus shook his head. No, it's more than that. You heard what no one else did. You acted before I even knew there was danger. If not for you, I'd probably be in pieces right now. Her golden eyes softened for just a moment, and then, to his surprise, he heard that familiar sound, a low, steady purr. Marcus chuckled softly. You know, Sarah, if you keep doing that every time I compliment you, I'll have to start doing it more often. Sarah's ears twitched, but she did not answer. Instead, she remained at his side, silent and unshakable. And Marcus realized something important. In this vast conquered, filled with species more powerful and advanced than humans, survival might not come from ships or weapons. It might come from something far simpler, the trust between two very different beings, standing together against the unknown. Days passed after the attempted sabotage, but the unease on the station remained. Security doubled in every hall, and whispers of betrayal spread among the delegates. Marcus knew that some factions still wanted humanity removed from the Concord. The disruptor incident had not been random. It was part of a larger plan. Through it all, Sarah never left his side. If Marcus attended meetings, she was there. If he ate in the station's dining halls, she stood behind him. Even in the quiet of his quarters, she remained close, alert as always. It was both comforting and, at times, slightly overwhelming. One evening, after a long day of arguments in the assembly, Marcus leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. I don't understand, Sarah. Why would anyone fear humans so much? We're new here. We're small. We don't even have colonies outside our own system yet. Sarah stood near the window, the starlight outlining her tall frame. They fear what they do not understand, she said. Marcus glanced at her. And what is it they don't understand? She turned, her golden eyes fixed on him. Humans are unpredictable. Other species plan their moves like games of strategy. You, however, speak with humor even when surrounded by enemies. You make bonds where others would see only weakness. That unsettles them. Marcus chuckled softly. So, my jokes are a threat to galactic stability. For the first time since he had met her, Sarah's expression softened into something close to a smile. It was brief, almost hidden, but Marcus caught it. I don't mean to be unpredictable, he said. It's just the way we are. Sarah stepped closer, her presence filling the room. For my people, bonds are formed through struggle or command. Loyalty is duty. But you... She paused, as if the words were difficult. You teased me. You made light where there was none. And yet, it touched something I did not expect. Marcus leaned forward, curious now. Touched what, exactly? She tilted her head slightly, ears flicking. Valyrians do not play, Captain, not the way you do. For us, play is something of the past, a memory of when our kind hunted under open skies. We grew beyond it. Or so we thought. But when you spoke so freely, when you treated me not as a tool of duty but as something more, I remembered, and I could not let go of it. Her words carried weight, more than Marcus had expected. He realized then that the purring, the closeness, her constant presence, it was not simply duty. It was a bond formed by something deeper, something rare. So, Marcus said carefully, you're saying you're here because of my bad sense of humor? This time Sarah gave no smile. She simply stared at him with that calm, steady gaze. I am here because you are different. Because you see me as Sarah, not just as a guard. For a long moment neither spoke. The faint hum of the station filled the silence. Marcus finally exhaled slowly. I see. Well, I'm glad you stayed. There was a faint sound then, the low, steady purr he had come to recognize. Before he could say more, the door chimed and an officer entered, breaking the quiet. Captain Hale, the officer said, we've learned that factions within the Assembly are questioning humanity's role. They claim the sabotage was staged, that perhaps humans brought danger here to gain sympathy. Marcus stood quickly. That's absurd. Perhaps. But words can be dangerous here. You will need to defend your people tomorrow before the Assembly. When the officer left, Marcus turned to Sarah. So it begins. They're trying to frame us. Sarah's tail flicked once. Then we fight back, not with claws but with truth. The next day, Marcus stood before the Assembly. Dozens of alien eyes watched him, some filled with suspicion, others with curiosity. He spoke clearly, presenting the evidence of the intruder and the disruptor device. He explained how the attack had been aimed at creating chaos, not helping humanity. But even as he spoke, he could feel the weight of doubt pressing in. The conquered had existed for centuries, and humanity was still new, still untested. Many were eager to push them out before they could rise too far. As the session ended, Marcus walked out with Sarah at his side. He sighed heavily. I don't think I convinced them. Maybe they'll never accept us. Sarah stopped him in the corridor, her golden eyes fierce. You are wrong. Some heard you today. Some saw that you stood with truth even when surrounded by doubt. That is strength, even if they do not admit it yet. Marcus studied her for a moment. You really believe that? Yes, Sarah said simply. I have seen many leaders, many soldiers, but you, Marcus Hale, stand in a way none of them do. You fight not with blades, but with words, with laughter, with stubborn hope. That is why I will never leave your side. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest at her words. He gave her a faint smile. Careful, Sarah. If you keep saying things like that, I might start to think you actually enjoy being around me. And once again, despite the seriousness of the moment, Sarah began to purr. The gala was meant to calm tensions after weeks of suspicion and argument. The grand hall shimmered with banners from every species, music from alien instruments echoed through the air, and trays of food, some strange, some familiar, floated past on hovering platforms. Diplomats smiled and exchanged words that hid sharp intent. It was a show of unity, even if unity was still far away. Marcus stood near one of the tall windows, a glass in his hand. He felt the weight of every gaze. Many watched him not as a guest, but as a test. Humanity was still the newcomer, and tonight's gala was another chance for others to judge. Sarah stood just behind him, her tall frame tense, even in this setting of elegance. Her golden eyes scanned the crowd constantly, her ears flicking at every sound. While others enjoyed the music, Sarah studied shadows. You don't relax much, do you? Marcus said softly, glancing at her. Her gaze never left the hall. Relaxation is for those who trust too easily. Marcus smiled faintly. I'll take that as a no. He lifted his glass to his lips, but stopped halfway. Sarah's hand moved suddenly, resting firmly on his arm. Her ears tilted sharply, and her eyes narrowed toward the far side of the hall. What is it? Marcus asked quietly. Too much stillness, she whispered. Those three near the pillars. They pretend to watch the stage, but their eyes move differently. They are waiting. Marcus followed her gaze. At first he saw nothing unusual, just three figures in formal clothing, their hands folded politely. But then he noticed their subtle movements, the way their eyes flicked not at the stage but at the crowd. Before he could react, the lights dimmed for the main announcement, and the music shifted into a sharp note. In that instant, the three figures moved. Their robes dropped and devices gleamed in their hands, flashing with light. Panic spread immediately. Guests cried out, scattering toward the exits. Security guards rushed forward, but the infiltrators activated their devices, sending arcs of energy across the floor. One guard fell instantly, his armor sparking. Sarah moved without hesitation. She leapt over a table, her claws sliding free. As she crashed into the nearest attacker, the force of her strike sent the device flying from his hand. He snarled in pain, but Sarah did not let him recover. Her tail whipped around, striking his legs and sending him to the floor. The other two turned their weapons toward her, but Marcus acted quickly. He grabbed one of the serving trays and flung it at the nearest attacker. The tray spun through the air, clattering against the weapon and knocking it aside for just a moment, enough time for Sarah to close the distance. She moved like lightning, her claws slashing through the second attacker's weapon, tearing wires apart. Sparks flew as the device died in his hand. A swift kick from Sarah sent him sprawling across the polished floor. The third attacker, however, did not hesitate. He raised his device high, a pulsing glow building at its core. Guests screamed, ducking behind tables. Marcus felt his chest tighten. The blast would hit dozens. Sarah lunged forward, but she was too far away. Instinct made Marcus act. He grabbed a decorative banner stand and swung it like a spear, crashing it into the attacker's arm. The device slipped from his grip and clattered to the floor. Sarah was there in an instant, her claws crushing it before it could detonate. The hall filled with silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of the frightened guests. Security rushed in to secure the attackers, dragging them away in restraints. Marcus leaned against the wall, catching his breath. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. Sarah approached him, her armor scratched, a faint cut across her cheek. "You're hurt," Marcus said. She shook her head. "A scratch, nothing more." But Marcus frowned. "You threw yourself at them without hesitation. You could have been killed." Her golden eyes softened slightly. "That is what I chose." Marcus exhaled slowly, then laughed under his breath. "And I thought I was the unpredictable one." Sarah tilted her head, her tail swaying gently behind her. For a moment, her fierce presence softened, and Marcus heard the low, steady sound of her purr. It was almost strange to hear it in the middle of the chaos, but it brought him calm. Later, when order was restored and the gala resumed in a quieter tone, Marcus and Sarah stood together at the edge of the hall. Delegates whispered among themselves, pointing not at humans with suspicion this time, but at the sight of a human and a Falerian who had stopped a disaster together. Marcus sipped what was left of his drink, then said quietly to Sarah, "We didn't just survive tonight. We proved something." Sarah looked at him. "What did we prove?" "That humanity isn't as weak as they think, and that maybe, just maybe, we make pretty good partners." Her ears flicked once, and the purr returned, soft and steady. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, I thought you'd like that." And in that moment, standing side by side under the starlight pouring through the windows, they both knew the course of the Concord had shifted. The gala attack had ended, but its echoes carried through the station long after. Repairs were still being made to the hall, and security doubled its patrols. The Concord leaders spoke of unity, yet their voices trembled with suspicion. The question of who had sent the infiltrators remained unanswered. Marcus, however, had other concerns. Sarah was wounded. Though she dismissed it as nothing, Marcus had seen the way she pressed her hand against her side when she thought no one was looking. The cut across her cheek had already begun to heal, but the deeper bruise along her ribs slowed her movements. For a warrior like her, admitting weakness was unthinkable, but Marcus could see it clearly. He found her sitting in his quarters that evening, sharpening the edge of her weapon with a steady hand. The light of the station glowed softly against her dark armor. You should be resting, Marcus said, stepping inside. I am resting, she replied without looking up. Marcus crossed his arms. Most people don't rest with a blade in their hands. Sarah glanced at him, her golden eyes calm. Most people cannot afford not to. He sighed, moving closer. You took a hit for me. You didn't have to. She paused, then lowered the weapon. I did. Marcus sat across from her, studying her face. Why, Sarah, you could have dodged. You could have let me take the risk. Her tail flicked once, a slow movement that betrayed the thought behind her silence. Finally, she said, because you are worth more alive than I am. Marcus frowned. That's not true. It is truth, Sarah said firmly. The Concord watches you. They listen to you. You change things with words where I only change them with claws. If you fall, your people fall. If I fall, another guard will take my place. Marcus shook his head. You really think it's that simple? Her gaze softened slightly and her voice lowered. It is never simple. But the choice was mine. For a moment, Marcus was silent. Then he leaned back, exhaling slowly. You know, that's the problem with all of this. Everyone keeps talking about humans as if we're some grand danger, some unpredictable threat. But they don't see the truth. Sarah tilted her head. And what is the truth? Marcus looked at her directly. The truth is we're just stubborn. We keep going even when we shouldn't. We laugh when others expect us to break. We make friends where others only see rivals. That's not a threat. That's just who we are. Sarah's ears twitched. And yet they fear it. Marcus nodded. Maybe because they don't know what to do with it. They live by rules, by traditions that never bend. Then humans come along and suddenly there's a species that doesn't play by those rules. It unsettles them. For a long time, Sarah studied him in silence. Then she spoke softly. It does not unsettle me. Marcus smiled faintly. No, it makes you purr. At that, Sarah's tail swayed, and a quiet sound rose in her throat. Even wounded, even weary, she purred. He leaned forward, his tone gentle. You shouldn't stay on duty while you're hurt. You need time to heal. I will not leave, Sarah said quickly. Marcus blinked. I wasn't asking you to leave me. I just meant, take it easy. But she shook her head firmly. You do not understand. Valyrian bonds are not easily broken. When I chose to stand at your side, it became more than duty. If I leave you, I break myself. Her words struck him deeply. He realized then that this was not simple loyalty. This was her nature, her belief, her choice. To her, protecting him was as natural as breathing. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. He had traveled light years away from Earth, into halls filled with suspicion and danger. Yet here, beside him, was someone who trusted him completely. Not because of power, not because of orders, but because of who he was. You know, Marcus said quietly, back on Earth, people would say you're crazy for choosing me. Sarah tilted her head. Then humans are wise, for they see truth in madness. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You always have the last word, don't you? Her ears flicked again and the low purr returned, steady and certain. Later, as Marcus lay in his bed and Sarah took her place near the door, he thought about what she had said. Humans were feared because they were different, because they broke patterns. But perhaps that difference was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not more rules, not more rigid traditions, but the simple, stubborn human way of reaching out, of connecting, of refusing to let go. And maybe, just maybe, that was why Sarah had chosen him. The Concord Council gathered in the great chamber once again, though this time the atmosphere was heavier than before. Guards lined the walls, their eyes sharp and weapons ready. The memory of the attack still lingered in every mind. The leaders of the various species sat in a wide circle, each watching the others with suspicion. Trust had become fragile, and every decision now seemed dangerous. Marcus stood in the center, feeling the weight of countless eyes. Sarah was behind him as always, her presence silent but powerful. Her wounds had mostly healed, but the faint mark across her cheek remained a reminder of her choice to protect him. One of the council members, a tall avrek with shimmering scales, spoke first. The question remains, can humanity be trusted in the conquered? Or do we risk opening our doors to chaos? A murmur spread across the chamber. Some nodded in agreement, others whispered their doubts. Marcus took a breath. He had no speech prepared, no clever plan. All he had was the truth. "You're right to be cautious," he began. His voice echoed softly through the chamber. "Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes, we argue with each other. We can be stubborn, reckless, and yes, unpredictable. But you've already seen the other side of that." The council grew quieter. Marcus continued. "When the attack happened, humans didn't run. We stood and fought, not because we wanted glory, not because we had orders, but because we won't let fear decide who we are. We protect, we adapt, we survive. That's who we are." He paused, glancing toward Sarah. Her golden eyes met his, steady and strong. "And it's not just humans. Look at Sarah. She stood with me even when she had no reason to. She took the hit meant for me. Why? Not because of duty, not because of politics, but because she chose to. That choice, that bond, is something humans believe in. It's what makes us strong." A council member, an elder with silver skin, leaned forward. "And you expect us to believe humanity will strengthen the concord, not fracture it?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, because humanity doesn't just fight battles. We make connections. We build friendships where there were none before. And sometimes those bonds are stronger than any treaty or weapon." The chamber fell into silence. Some leaders exchanged doubtful looks, others thoughtful ones. Finally, the avrek who had spoken first tilted his head. "And what do you ask of us, human?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. "I don't ask for blind trust, I ask for a chance. Let humanity stand among you, not as outsiders, but as allies. Judge us by our actions, not your fears." The silence stretched longer, the weight of the decision pressing on every heart. Then, slowly, one council member gave a nod. Another followed. One by one, they signaled their agreement, though not all did so with ease. When the final vote was cast, the decision was clear. Humanity would be welcomed into the conquered. Marcus felt a wave of relief, but also responsibility. This was only the beginning. Humanity had been given a place at the table, but now they would have to prove they belonged. As the council dismissed, Sarah stepped beside him. "You spoke well," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "I wasn't sure I could convince them." "You did not convince them with words alone," Sarah replied. "You convinced them with what you are." They walked through the station's long corridors, the lights dimming into evening mode. Marcus glanced at her. "You know you don't have to stay with me forever. The danger's past. You could return to your people." Her ears twitched, and her tail swayed behind her. "I told you once. When I chose to stay, it was not duty. It was bond. If you walk into the unknown, then so will I." Marcus chuckled softly. "Guess I don't get much of a choice, do I?" "You do," Sarah said firmly. "But you will not choose to be alone." They stopped by one of the wide observation windows, the stars stretching endlessly beyond. Marcus gazed out at them, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had just taken its first step into a greater universe, one filled with doubt, fear, and danger, but also filled with possibility. Sarah stood close, her steady presence grounding him. For the first time since leaving Earth, Marcus felt certain of something. Humanity would not face the galaxy alone. They would face it with allies, with bonds, with stubborn courage, and perhaps with the low, steady sound of a Beastwoman's purr. Beside him, he realized that sometimes the most unlikely connections were the strongest of all. The stars called to them both, and neither intended to turn away.